Today's topic is on the earthly and cosmic nutrition stream. It is also called the etherization of the blood. And in a way, it will be an addition to what we spoke about in the talk on the esoteric significance of the glands. As a review, let me just put a few things into perspective. We spoke before about there being 7 glands that control the 7 chakras, and that these can sometimes be visualized as pillars in a temple, pillars that hold up this temple of wisdom. Now, often it's depicted that those pillars are in an arrangement of a 6-pointed star with one pillar in the middle. The pillar in the middle, of course, represents the sun, and the other pillars can represent the 6 organs. But that number 7 is absolutely magical when it comes to trying to understand what it is that feeds these chakras and what it is that feeds the glands, the nutrition that they need to give us this miraculous life that comes out of our etheric body, which is controlled by the glands. Rudolf Steiner said that the glands are one aspect of the etheric body, and that the nerve sense system works through the chakras. But there's also 2 other parts of the human body, the physical body, and that's what we know as the results of scientific investigation, the things that are physical, that are tangible, and as I spoke about last time, some of the things that science is finding out about the physical shows that there's a very thin line between the spirit and the physical, and that certain spiritual forces can be seen almost as physical manifestations. And then on the far extreme, on the other hand, is the human ego. Now, the human ego, or I consciousness, is a completely different picture. Where does your ego exist? That is very difficult to define. You can say that when your finger hurts, your ego is in your finger. If we discuss the shape of the universe, then your ego goes out to the entire expanse of the universe. The ego is the most mysterious thing. But really our task is to take the ego, usually starts in thinking in the head, but our true home of the ego is in the heart, and to take that ego back into the realm of the divine. As we spoke about before, the head is the most perfected part of the human body. And we can even see analogies to the Garden of Eden there. One can say that the cerebellum and the cerebral cortex represent 2 trees. When you look at them in cross-section, they look like a tree. And at the base of the cerebellum, where the choroid plexus take blood and turn it into cerebral spinal fluid, you actually have almost like 2 springs coming out, 2 rivers coming out. And then again, in the lateral ventricles, which we referred to last time, the first and second ventricles, are fantastic wings that are actually unimaginable until you see a picture of them. But when you see them, it looks like a set of wings that has surrounded the midbrain. It's the most beautiful picture. And the pineal gland looks like, as we referred to before, Vishnu riding on the Garuda bird, or consciousness riding upon the activity of the brain. Now, this is a beautiful picture, and one can say that what we're trying to do is to take the part of ourselves in the present and return it to where it is that we came from, a more perfected vision that was developed in our brain and in our head as a picture of the cosmos, and where the 7 different chambers of the brain have been more developed than the 7 chambers in the heart and the 7 chambers in the human organs. So as we focus on the concept of earthly and cosmic nutrition, what we're talking about is a cycle that goes from the heart up through the throat chakra to the brow chakra to the pineal, and then it turns back down to the brow chakra and comes back down and literally feeds all the chakras what it is that it needs in terms of the dew of immortality, or this substance that makes your nerves work so beautifully. Etherization of the blood is spoken about almost exclusively by anthroposophists, particularly Karl Koenig in his book Earth and Man gives a beautiful description of the etherization of the blood. Rudolf Steiner gives a description of it that can be found in the Gospel of Sophia. And the ancients, particularly Tantric Buddhism and the most ancient mixture of Buddhism and Chinese Banpo, which we have combined in this picture that we'll refer to here in this statue of Kuan Yin. But the images and the symbols we're going to refer to that are in this statue are in fact the etherization of the blood, or the earthly and cosmic nutrition stream. Now, oftentimes in the West we take these thoughts of the ancient Vedic literature, the ancient Indian literature, the ancient Buddhist, the Tibetan Buddhist, the Banpo culture, all of those things, and we try to understand them in a Western mind. And what arises out of that is someone who does yoga constantly, but still gains weight and has no consciousness. That is what happens when you're working on the lower chakras. But if you're going to work on the higher chakras, you do not try to control your breath. Everything is natural. Everything is pure. And you're led to this purity out of your own strivings. But you can also have a clear description of it so that it enhances your capacity of consciousness to develop this stream of energy rising from the heart to the head. Now, we can describe that in great detail, and it is described in the Gospel of Sophia in the most explicit pictures that I have seen in any book, in any writing. And as we look at that, we find a most mysterious thing. In the West, yes, Kundalini has been described by the ancients, but when it is tried here in the West, it doesn't reach fulfillment. It doesn't bring the person to wisdom. You can have a Kundalini burst of neurological energy in your body rising through the spine, being stimulated by the nerve ganglia of the chakras, and it can create light explosions in your brain. But what good does that do? What needs to happen is that we create a second spinal column. And that second spinal column is in front of the first spinal column, and it is etherized materials. It is not bioelectric energy in the nerves. It is, in fact, a completely different substance. And we'll describe that in just a minute. But what we need to do is first realize that as we're describing substances, substances are not the spirit. They are the last result of the spirit. So when we say the glands are a representation of the etheric body that comes from the world ether and in fact holds the secrets of the entire universe in them, that is one aspect of them, but that is not their true spiritual nature. So as we go into this description, please be mindful that we're talking about substances, but behind these substances, if you study carefully, particularly with modern science and the discoveries that are being found each day, it is a miraculous view of the way the spirit manifests in the physical world. It is in fact a theory of everything if we consider the seven ethers and the way that they manifest through their septenary manifestation in the world. One could say, when you see the influence of all the planets, the seven planets and the sun, all together as one, that is what you would have as the etherization of the blood happening between the heart and the head. This symbiotic relationship is found in many different pictures in spiritual paths. In Tantric Buddhism, it is described in the Vajra tools, it's described in very exact details. But what we need to have is a picture that we can understand. For instance, studies have been shown that if you understand that the cancer in your body or the illness in your body is in a certain place, and you get a very clear understanding of the organ it may be affecting and the type of cancer it is and the type of working that it is, it has been shown that meditating with more information upon your illness increases your ability to heal yourself. Consciousness affects the physical, not vice versa. The ego, your spirit, comes down and affects your nerve system, which affects your etheric body, your glandular system, which affects your physical body. Illness arises from the top down, not from the bottom up. But the problem is that if you haven't handled your four lower chakras and gotten your nutrition together so that you can actually have a strong fire in the belly to feed the heart, you will not be able to create this etherization of the blood. Now let's go into a technical talk about the etherization of the blood. In Tibetan Buddhism, It is found through the Vajrayana and Tantrayana practices of Vajrayogini. And these practices show how you can enhance your glands and enhance their activity through consciousness. Now, in a modern frame of reference, one can look at it in a physiological way. They say that you first must get a fire in the belly, which in Tibetan Buddhism it's called Tumo. It's called the fierce woman. The fierce woman is a fire that happens in your hara. This fire is often shown in images, particularly sculptures of Buddha, as when he holds his hand down below his belly button. This is in fact creating that fire energy. Now that energy is created because the breath is retained. It's called the vas retention breath, where you take a part of your breath, you hold it back through a very specific breathing exercise that has very specific timing to it, and you put it into this vase, you put a lid on the vase, and you hold it there until you cook it, until it reaches a great temperature. At that point, you slowly release it, and as it rises up, it then gives the heart the ability to have the warmth that it needs to start this second spinal column. The second spinal column is in fact very refined elements that stream up the front of the body and wind around what would be called the Kundalini serpent. But this time, it's a serpent of consciousness. It's the serpent that was on the tree of knowledge that brought the wisdom to know the difference between God and man. This is the serpent remounting that tree of knowledge. And as the serpent winds around the neurological processes of the ganglia, the chakras, and the nerve processes in the spine going up into the brain, it actually takes them into a new realm. It uses those neurological forces as a fire to take the substance carbon. Carbon is found everywhere in the whole world. Carbon is the philosophical stone. It is the Holy Grail. Without carbon being selfless, there would be no organic world. Carbon gives up of itself, and it combines and surrenders, it gives and takes as if it were the Christ principle itself. Carbon is a magical substance. The physical body is connected to carbon. Then there's a second of 4 substances which basically create the entire organic world. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen. These substances actually are activated in each of your chakras in this process of etherization of the blood, the earthly and cosmic nutrition stream. When carbon can be retained in the heart and can be rarefied so that it literally is transformed, it is etherized, it is turned into what we might call in modern science a cold plasma. And it starts to rise because it has in it these other substances, and hydrogen is a gas that always wishes to rise and go out into the universe. So carbon starts in the heart. Carbon is a cube, and there's a cube found in the heart that directly relates to that. When we rise to the next chakra, we transform oxygen. The way that that happens is the throat chakra takes oxygen and does the same thing to it that the heart chakra did to carbon. So now carbon merges with oxygen in the throat chakra. And as this merging is happening, and as this process rises, we now transform the 2 substances on the earth that we call he and she. Silica and calcium. Silica is the she, which works through the pineal gland. Calcium is the he, which works through the pituitary gland. The one is all levity and light and youth and buoyance, and the other one is calcification, old age, the male substance in the world. When you're born and in utero, you are mostly silica, over 90% silica. As you grow older, calcium moves into your body, takes over where silica was, old age happens, and in fact one can say that old age is a process of calcification of the body, turning it away from silica. The carbon and the oxygen that are now being rarefied take silica in calcium, the male and female, merge them together and transforms them. But it must go through 3 stages before it can take that silica to the place it belongs, which is the pineal gland, and take calcium from the realm of death into the realm of life so that it can be deposited as calcium carbonate crystals. It can go wrong. You can transform calcium into calcium calcite, which causes aging, which causes all kinds of memory problems with the brain. Or you can turn it into calcium phosphate, which is also found in the pineal gland. All 3 of those substances of calcium, 3 different forms. Again, the threefold nature of the human being found in the pineal gland is the end product of this process. But if you do not have the middle process of calcium carbonate, you either go too far into the death processes or too far into the inflammation processes of the human body. So what we're trying to find is that middle path that takes carbon and completely merges it in a new spiritual way. For instance, when you take carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, that's what all amino acids are created from, all starches, all plants, all living organic life. Human life, amino acids are transformed into higher forms in enzymes, and then they are transformed into DNA. But what we have in the chakra transformation of the frontal spinal column, the etherization of the blood, the earthly and cosmic nutrition stream, is in fact taking those substances into a spiritual nature. So once we take carbon, oxygen, nitrogen in the brow chakra, and hydrogen in the crown chakra, once all of them have been worked together and transformed silica and calcium into these rarefied substances, you can see the product being deposited in the pineal gland. When the pineal gland stands upright, it opens the aqueduct that feeds the third ventricle, and at that point the piezoelectric charge of the pineal gland from the calcium carbonate crystals shoots across to the pituitary gland, and this completes the cycle of the cosmic and earthly nutrition stream. We give to the gods the transformed elements of life, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, sense perception, all of our higher thinking, feeling, and willing. We give that to the gods as nutrition. And if we do not feed them, they will not feed us. So through the process of consciousness development, we can feed the gods each day the transformed elements of what is eternal in our environment. That's what we're doing here. The gods cannot come down into this realm. We are their eyes, their ears, their sense organs. We transform the physical world into the spiritual, give it to them as nutrition. They in turn give us ambrosia and nectar as the pituitary that bathes the blood system and the nerve system. So this process of going up and coming back is a cyclical process. It's a cycle. One can see it as winding around what would be the normal processes. Many people have these processes, but materialistic forms of them. It takes consciousness to transform them into a higher manifestation, which would create that second spinal column in the front of our body. And so, this type of wisdom has been known for a long, long time. But now our consciousness has reached the point where the Gospel of Sophia is taking this new eternal gospel of Christ in the living etheric realm into the next phase. Kuan Yin is a representation of Christ in the etheric. So we can see this beautiful representation of the human being in Kuan Yin. When we take that vow of the Bodhisattva, we say, we're not going to go up into the higher realms until we've managed the lower realms, until we've managed this dragon. And the dragon is, in fact, a combination of all the animals. This is our astral body, our lower body of desires. So when she takes the Tumo and the drops of immortality and feeds them, she is, in fact, giving that spiritual nutrition to the lower body so that it can then have the forces to create this earthly and cosmic nutrition stream, this etherization of the blood, this process of reuniting our lower self with our higher self.